I want to know, because this has been such a long process for you putting together this film, I think something like 4 years. How does it feel now that you're on the cusp of unveiling it to the world?
Oh, it's great. It's been a long time coming. It's taken it's almost hard to even fathom, just because it's been so many things have happened in the last year alone, and so much work has gone into it. It almost seems unreal in a way, surreal to be certain, but we're so excited to finally be able to show it to the world.
But I know you guys have screened it at various high-profile festivals. What's been the most surprising or delightful kind of reaction that you've received from audiences in screenings?
I just think that the passion and the anger and all, I think more, it's just the emotion that people feel after they've seen it. And when we've been fortunate enough to be there for Q&As, the questions that we get and it really does enrage people, or it inspires them, and it, for whatever it does, it creates something. Excuse me. It moves people, and that's, to me, that is, for whatever reason they're moved or inspired or impassioned. That's what we were striving to do with this film.
Well, it's so touching because, I mean, this whole journey, Damien's whole case has been kind of, the outcome of it has been kind of drawn upon by the court of public opinion more than anything else, the public outrage. So I would think that there's a great sense of community around Damien and this cause.
Oh, there. Excuse me, I'm just.
That's okay.
Bad cold, and I'm still coughing. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
No, they're from, when I first got involved in 1996, the case was not very well known, and over the years it just grew and grew, and the support around us from around the world, and from, in the last few years, more from the community in Arkansas, which was amazing that came about. It was crucial. But no, we've even today it's still growing with this film and Damien's book that came out in September. More and more people are learning about the case.
Yeah, and you were first drawn to Damien and this whole journey based on the power of that first Paradise Lost film, wasn't it? Wasn't it that kind of drew you in?
It absolutely. I saw it in New York in 1996, and it just hit me like a freight train, the impact of that film and what had happened during the trial and what had happened to Damien, Jason, and Jesse. It affected me greatly, and I had a hard time not thinking about it for a while, and then eventually, I grew up in the South, so it's not that I didn't understand what had happened, but I felt an affinity for Damien, who had the call to stand out and be an individual in that small town. Yeah.
Well, I know this is the question that you're asked most often, and has to be, but at what period of time did you decide you needed to make this film with the help of Amy and Peter? What about it seemed right?
We had Peter and Fran had come on board and started working with me in 2005. So we had been working together it was an intense few years where we discovered the new evidence and their DNA evidence, the forensic science. There were new witnesses, and when we presented that to the court and Judge Burnett turned us down in the appeal, that's when we realized we had to get this information out to the public somehow. And if the courts weren't going to hear it, then we would start filming a documentary, doing more of an investigation more than anything, so that we were documenting the evidence that we were discovering, and also just new witnesses, and sending Amy Berg, who we brought on board as our director, And she went out and got people to talk who had never spoken to anyone before. So it really was, it ended up being what we would have put on in a hearing, is what this film is.
Well, that's what struck me about it, because it does seem much more investigative in nature than the Paradise Lost films. And I could only imagine that had a lot to do with Amy, since she comes from an investigative background. Isn't that right?
That is right. And when we first started talking about doing the film, that's exactly the type of documentarian we were looking for, someone who had more of that investigative background. And after seeing her film Deliver Us from Evil, we knew that was exactly the style we were looking for, and it turned out we were exactly right. Amy did an amazing job on the film and the investigation she brought to the case.
Yeah, I was wondering, because you've been, obviously your great love is Damien, and I'm curious, when he was released, what was the process like? Because you're his guide back into the outside world. What has that been like for you? It
was, as I'd felt when I first got involved in the case, I felt completely and absolutely lost. I didn't know what he was experiencing. It was hard to understand the stress and trauma he was undergoing, and he wasn't very forthcoming with how he was dealing with the world. And it took about 6 months for him to finally be able to express that to me, and all that time he had been suffering because he was anxious, he was scared, he was unsure. But after that, after I understood it, then my life became so much easier, because I realized he needs help, he needs guidance, he needs somebody. He's not going to come to anyone and tell them that. That's just not who he is. Mm-hmm. But once I realized that, it just enabled me to. Our whole life just got softer, and because there was an understanding there that even though I wouldn't have to do it forever, there needed to be someone to protect him from the world, so to speak, until he could get used to living in it and he could move about. And then we're still working on that. It's still a struggle.
Yeah. Well, I know I have limited time with you, but I just want to ask you finally that, seeing that the Paradise Lost film is what inspired you to become a part of this to begin with, what do you hope West of Memphis inspires from audiences?
I hope people come to the film, and I certainly hope it's an education to anyone who might be a future juror, or anyone who sees it not knowing the dire straits our legal system is in. But I also want people to walk away from it feeling inspired, and maybe feeling like something that's so daunting in their life that they feel they can't overcome, or something that's so heavy on them that it might inspire them to know that they can get through it, and they can attain it, and possibly do something else, something wonderful with their life. Damien and I both feel that way.